and our session is on security and understanding the security risks in the current environment. Just thought I'd set you a little bit of context with this because it's relatively unknown. Since the 1st of January 2015 up until the 30th of September this year, there has been on average 2 terror attacks every day. 15 people killed every day. We don't get to see most of the stories, but it's that serious a thing. The number of attacks has increased exponentially. I've just completed a report that will be released tomorrow, and it's called The Diminishing Impact of Terrorism, but it's got a lot of statistics on where the impact's worst, how you can minimize the impact on your hotel, etc. So it's quite good. Another fact, a third of all attacks, of the most serious attacks that have killed more than 100 people, a third of them have all occurred in Africa. However, working with STR, we have found that actually the impact of terror attacks is getting less, and it's taking less time to recover from all of these attacks. So around the world, we're finding that certain markets are improving a lot quicker than they used to. Maybe because there's too many terror attacks and people just aren't having the same impact from it and the same scaredness. And the final fact I'm going to give you now before I introduce the panel is you are 5 times more likely to die by falling out of bed than you are to be killed in a terror attack. So I'd like to take this chance just to introduce the panel. So I think I'll start with Mossadeck. Can you just say a couple of minutes about yourself, say what you do, just let everyone know a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I'm Mossadeck Bally. I'm the CEO of Azalaï Hotels Group, which is an indigenous West African hotel chain. We are owner and operator.
Ian?
Good afternoon, everybody. Ian Clarke. I'm Head of Crisis and Security Consulting for Control Risks for the East Africa region. Control Risks is an international risk management company, been operating since 1975, specialising in integrity risk, political risk and security risk itself. For myself, on a routine basis, I specialise in the development of risk consulting and security design solutions, primarily across urban development and critical national infrastructure.
And Joseph?
Thank you. I'm called Brigadier General Joseph Nzabamwita. I'm the Secretary General for National Intelligence and Security Service of Rwanda. My daily job is looking at how to secure this country. I work very closely with other defense and security practitioners both in this country and across Africa. I'm an outgoing chairperson of the Africa Intelligence Organization called CISA. So I combine both what we are doing to secure both Rwanda, but also across Africa. I'm happy that you all guys are here.
Fantastic. The way I'm planning to run this, if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to ask a few questions to the panelists. We're going to get their views on things, and I'm going to leave a few minutes at the end in case you've got any questions. So please save up any questions you've got and make sure we can see you and get a microphone to you. So I think the first and the most important thing to do is how do we avoid the problems that we're in? How do we make a country safer or a hotel safer, whether it's from a terror attack or from some other sort of issue that's going to drive away business. So I think I'll start with you, Joseph, because you've got the experience countrywide. How can we make a country like Rwanda safer? I mean, I know you've done a great job, but what are the tips that other people can copy?
Number one, let me first of all begin by saying that Rwanda is peaceful, secure, and ready for investments. Rwanda is secure after 23 years when we went through the horrible genocide against the Tutsi. And once we stopped the genocide, this leadership stopped the genocide, we embarked on making peace and security the cornerstone of rebuilding Rwanda. Whatever we are doing, this issue of peace and security is fundamental. So that's one of the fundamental canons. If you want to develop a country, if you want to attract investments, invest in peace and security. That's number one. Number two, security does not involve only the hardcore security issues. We are talking about comprehensive security, human security, and if you embrace all these issues and well knowing that actually you are investing in security for your own people so that you have a foundation for long-term development, then you can also be able to address all other security concerns. What we have done in Rwanda is that we have built a brand. We want brand Rwanda. To be able to build brand Rwanda, you need to work very closely with all the security practitioners. You need to look at the macro sector level. You need to then look at the micro security level. You need to look at the relevant policies that build and are like puzzles to the overall security of a country, right from security issues, right from environmental issues. If you do not invest in all the appropriate policies in building a secure country, then you are not going to have a secure country. We are looking at having brand Rwanda, right from the policies in investments in Rwanda. Critical infrastructure. You look at airports, you look at hotels, you look at the road infrastructure, but we also look at the social factors, the health sector, then the environmental factors. If you make sure that you abolish the polythene papers by themselves and you have adequate environment, a secure, clean environment, that will be attractive for security. But you also ensure that the hotel cleaners, the cab drivers, the park wardens, all are incorporated in the security apparatus. And with all this, we think that we have incorporated all the Rwandans in the build-up of the secure environment for this country. Let me conclude by, on this point by saying that we really appreciate the investors, but also make sure that the local investors are the primary people that are also incorporated in the planning process of the peace safety architecture. If you do not look at the local investors, the hoteliers, and they work very closely with the policymakers, with the security practitioners, then you are not going to have a secure environment that is ideal for the international brands that we are looking here today.
Okay, so we're assuming now that we've taken Joseph's advice and we've made the country as safe as we can. Mossadeck, how do you make your hotels safe? Because I mean, you run a number of hotels and you've been lucky enough not to be attacked in areas that have had attacks. What sort of things do you put in place? What sort of policies or strategies or facilities do you need to make sure that a hotel is safe and less likely to be attacked?
Thank you. Well, definitely now as a hotelier, we changed the way we do business in the hospitality business. First, you have to invest in HR. You have to train your HR to assess risks. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did. And we first hired a chief security officer who is an ex-army officer to train our staff and to put procedures. Second, you have to invest in customer awareness, because when you put procedures before you get into a hotel, some customers, and many customers, don't like it, mm-hmm. and they complain. I usually get a phone call from a friend, I went to this hotel and I was searched, how come they search me, don't they know me? So these are the kind of awareness you have to develop, mm-hmm. And explain to customers that it's for their own security that we do that. Of course, you have to invest in infrastructure. Now, when we design a hotel, we bring experts, security experts, at the design stage so that they can tell us what to do in terms of CCTV, in terms of exit doors, and many of this stuff. So we get experts to advise us at the early stage of design. And finally, we invest, of course, in equipment, mm-hmm. scanners, and all this expensive equipment, but you have to do it. Before, the customer first criteria to choose a hotel was location. Second was Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. Today, first criteria is security, then location, then Wi-Fi. So it has really changed the way customers choose.
That's true. My wife won't let me go to South Sudan anymore because it's not safe. Ian, can I bring you in? Can you give me some, because you've worked in many hotels and helped advise them on what they should put. If you were giving someone a top 3 list of things that they must do, what would you suggest that they considered?
Well, the sad reality is, and it's heartening to hear what Mossadeck has just said, is traditionally security is an afterthought. It's a bolt-on solution that's usually done part-way through the construction phase, which never works. The reality is, exactly what has just been said, security has to be part of the feasibility and the initial design. It has to be based on a threat and risk approach. You can only mitigate against what is known. Otherwise, it's the world according to me, and I can say what I want. And working through that full design process, it has to go all the way through to operations. There has to be a consideration into that. There is a lot of over-engineering that happens in the hospitality sector, where integrators, of course, will do free designs because you're buying their kit. You over-engineer security systems without taking into effect or account the operators of that kit. And if that operator sadly is the first entry on the pay scale and poorly educated and not particularly well trained, well, you've just wasted a lot of money on equipment that isn't even going to work properly, and certainly not to what it should be doing. So all of this has to be taken into effect. A security design has to be bespoke. It has to go all the way through to operations. Otherwise, you run the risk of over-engineering, as I say, but also under-engineering and leaving gaps. And this can be exploited.
So it's not just a case of I'm going to put some people at the door who are going to sit and check for bombs with a mirror under the car. I'm not just going to have an X-ray machine I walk through that no one really knows when it's going off, because it always does because of my phone or my belt or something. And as you were saying earlier, Mossadeck, the sort of customer, I don't like to be delayed too much. How do we make a customer happy to deal with those speed bumps in the road? Because I've read a report that says American tourists would happily spend another 20% on their holidays if they knew it was going to make it safer. So we must be able to convert it to hotel guests to say, I tell you what, you're going to be sat here at these little speed bumps, which are going to be made effective so that we can actually make it work by training people, but that's going to actually benefit you. You're going to be a lot safer. How do we make customers happy to do that? Any ideas? With all your experience?
Well, what we do, we put in front of our hotels now, before you get in, big signboards with security procedures. When we have an issue with customer, we try to have a top manager talk to the customer, maybe tell him or her why we have to have these procedures. As I said, we need to develop customer awareness to security issues. And especially in the diplomatic community, when they come, usually they are not used to be searched. No. And sometimes we really have a tough problem with this kind of customer category. So for me, it's to develop customer awareness, to train very well our staff. When you go to airports, you don't question these security procedures. No. Because they are there. If you don't go through these procedures, you do not board the plane.
I go to the airport, it takes me half an hour.
I don't know why customers, when they come to the hotel, some of them, not all of them, some of them feel that they don't need to go through these procedures. So we really need to come, the specialists are here, we need to come. For me, it's not only investment in equipment, but it's for me an investment in HR and customer awareness to make people accept that in hotels today, before you get in, you need to go through these procedures.
If we take Ian's suggestion about making sure that we've got good staff in place, then not only will they be doing the checks properly, they'll be in a position to actually keep the guest comfortable. So is this something we've got to accept as an industry-wide base, that these costs are going to go up? Security costs for personnel, which is where we don't normally spend the money, need to go up to make sure that we've got the right people. Would you say that's fair, Ian?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's an important point that people very often miss is a bad design only fools the general public. That is it. People see security systems and they think they're safe. The reality, and the cold, harsh reality, is an organised criminal, or a terrorist for that matter, conducts reconnaissance. They probe, they test,
Absolutely.
and they only commit the attack if they know that they can get away with it. So a lot of the time, these systems are fooling the general public, not the perpetrators. And by, yes, the appropriate training, the appropriate fitting of systems at a design stage, you can employ methodologies like crime prevention through environmental design, which enables us to actually get into the psyche of humanity and influence people's decisions without them even realizing it's being done. But that can only be done right at the start. It can't be retrofitted later down the line. And so there's a lot that we can do in that area, actually, to solve a lot of these problems, which in turn allows for insurance reductions as well. Because if you can prove a proper design approach and you can explain and warrant what you've done, then at the end of the day, you don't have to be the best hotel in the world, but if you're better than the hotels left and right of you, then to a terrorist or an organised criminal, if he's not going to succeed, he's not going to succeed. He can't fail to be world news for that day, so he'll take the easier option.
It's interesting. One other thing that we've got to address on this panel is the impact of elections on hotels and security in a country. We have all sorts of issues where, in my experience, I've been looking to visit a country and I've delayed it for 3 or 4 weeks just to make sure the election's over, just so there's no unsafeness in the country when I arrive. We've got the issue of what's going to happen in Kenya at the moment, which is not looking very good, and it does have an impact on hotel trading. I wanted to pick your guys' brains on this. I mean, obviously in Rwanda we're quite lucky. We've had very secure elections. I don't even look at when the elections are, and I don't think I'm worried about it.
David, it's not luck.
No, it's not.
It's
absolutely
not.
You've put procedures in place to make sure that
what you invest will determine what you reap. But let me first of all go back to the issue of investment in security in terms of equipment and hotels, personnel, and the issue of an inconvenience by customers. It's an issue of mindset. Mm-hmm. You see, if you make sure that you invest properly in the security procedures, you invest properly in the equipment, and then the staff themselves understand the essence of the investment in security, the outcome of investment in security is an ensured peace and a secure environment for your guests. Then you explain to your guests, the guests are also going to be very comfortable with that. But oftentimes, the problem is that actually we look at these investments as if we are doing it for some other person, not for you, and not in the interest of your guests. So I work very closely with all the CEOs in this country, including the heads of these brands, these good hotels. Mm-hmm. But when we make sure that you abide by procedures of security, the first problem comes, an inconvenience to our customers. No, but what about the inconvenience when it comes to peace and security? Mm-hmm. Their safety for these people. So there is a change of mindset. That's the first point. The second point is, I want to elaborate that Rwanda is secure not because of accident, but of the deliberate investments that we are making and the comprehensive approach that we are making, both the investors, the government, the private sector, and the people themselves. Look at the policies, and then they are going to be explain them properly, then you are going to have a return on investment. Let me finalize on this issue by saying that actually Rwanda is more secure than most of the developed countries. It's not true that Africa is not secure when it comes to investments in hotels and whatever. It's the issue of the portrayal through the media. But Africa is abound with potentials, and would think that if such forums can continue, we would need more of these investments, including investment in security. On the issue of elections, let me say that If you look at the global, make a global assessment, the issue of elections across the world actually is unpredictable. And the populace from all over, the population from different countries, be it on the American continent, look at what is taking place in Europe, look at Barcelona, and what is taking place here in Africa. If the elections are not organized properly to address the issues of the populace, the return is the same. The result is the same, whether in Africa, Europe, or elsewhere. So let me conclude by saying that it's not unique in Africa, but if you don't invest properly, if you don't look at elections that are going to address the real issues, then there are bound to be problems. But suffice to say that I think Africa is by and more secure than
I like your point on the media, because there is a very perceived bias. We like to call it the CNN effect, where basically any story about Africa tends to be negative. Is that your experience, Mossadeck?
Yeah, definitely. This is a point I wanted to stretch out. When you have terrorist attacks in Paris, Barcelona, couple of them in London, nobody tell travelers not to go to Paris or London or Barcelona. When you have an attack on a remote resort in the suburb of Bamako, all the Western embassies in Bamako will tell their nationals not to come to Bamako.
Yeah.
This is, for me, it's not fair. I mean, the way the press, and especially the international press, treat terrorist attacks in African countries is just unfair. And it does harm most of our industries, travel industries and the other industries. So I really think that there should be a balance between good and fair treatment of what is happening in Africa, because terrorism today is an international problem. It's an international matter. It's
all over the world.
All over. So maybe, I don't know, probably the press is in this room, but definitely this is something which is harming
I don't
very
think it's
much
just on
our
terrorism.
industry.
I was asked the other day, oh, you go to Africa, what do you eat? Because they thought it was Ethiopia in 1985. I'm like going, it's just ridiculous, it really is. We've got literally 2 minutes left, guys, so I'm going to ask if we've got any questions in the audience before we sign off. If there is anyone looking interested? Okay, well, I'll ask one final question here then. It is quite clear from the research that I've just done that if there is an attack in Kenya, it will have an impact on East Africa. Each country will be linked by a region, you know, and it won't be quite as bad in Tanzania or as in Uganda as it will be in Kenya, but there will be an impact. Does that mean that we, as citizens of the world, basically, we've got a duty to try and stop attacks in other countries? So, for example, Rwanda, if there was an attack in Burundi, that might have an impact on you guys. Would you, do you work closely with all the countries around you to try and sort of, help them in their processes? Because they may not have put the same things in place that you've got in place. They may not have made the same investment.
Terrorists will strike anywhere in the world. To be able to fight them requires cooperation and collaboration between intelligence services, security organizations, but also requires the cooperation of the private sector, the hotel industry, the tour agencies, the tour and travel agencies, airline industry, aviation security. So it requires a lot of cooperation, and we do collaborate. Is it enough? No, it's not yet enough. So I think, yes, a lot of cooperation is required, not only in combating crime, but also rather terrorism, but also transnational crime.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you very much, guys. Go on, Mossadeck.
I just want to add on what Brigadier General just said. For me, collaboration between countries is key to fighting terrorism. For example, in West Africa, there is this initiative called G5, G5 of the 5 Sahelian countries, but also collaboration between government agencies and private sectors. In Mali, for example, now we have regular meetings with the Ministry of Security to assess security information, security problems. We also have information sharing between the hotels in Bamako.
I presume
So-
you'd do that
So
actually.
that's very important also.
Yeah, because you'll have tips, you'll have seen people, and you'll be able to just say, keep an eye out for these. Okay, well, guys, well, thank you very much for your time. I wish we'd have had longer because there's lots more we could have talked about, but thank you very much
Thank you.
indeed.
Thank you.